Hello there! On this video I will be building a cabinet from red oak for an actual paying customer, which is a bit unusual for me because I've been mainly building for myself. I'm not at the level where I want to take too much commissions. I'm still learning, I'm not an expert. But this specific customer is my friend, so he understands that the end result will probably not be perfect. But to be honest, I am quite happy how it turned out. This cabinet will be placed under an aquarium, which will be big and heavy, full of water, so this needs to be sturdy, which is partly why the legs and the whole structure was designed in a way it was. And as the title says, I had to learn SketchUp for this build. I'm not much of a designer, but for me it's completely impossible to draw things in 3D. I simply cannot do it. And in order for me to design this piece, I had to learn SketchUp. And if you're in the same position, I will link Steve Ramsey's video to the description, because that was actually the one video that unlocked SketchUp for me. It's been super painful for me to learn it, but that video really helped out. And later on this video I will show parts of the SketchUp drawing while I explain what I'm actually building. So bear with me, you will see the SketchUp. But for me it has really unlocked a lot for me, because as I mentioned, I cannot draw anything in 3D. I have sometimes been struggling with designing my furniture that I'm building, so in a way I always knew I had to learn it, but it's taken a long time. But I'm super happy that I'm now able to at least draw simple pieces of furniture and can design how I will do joinery here and there. So was this design perfect? No. But did it help me building this? Oh yes. So what I've done so far, what you have seen on the video, is very standard milling process, getting the lumber straight, ready for panel glue-ups. I always use dominoes. You saw on the video there was a bit of a bow or something on one of the pieces. And that's exactly where dominoes help, because they help with the alignment when you actually glue them up. So nothing special so far, but I mean, this is really like every single build video or every single build, it always starts with milling the lumber, but that's now done. In a few moments I will show the SketchUp drawing and the amount of panels I needed to do. But basically every single panel was done in the same way, using dominoes as I mentioned. There is one thing I needed to be very careful and know which panel will go where, because some of these will yield two dividers, for example. So I did mark to the side of the panels where things will be cut, in order for me not to expose the dominoes when I put them in smaller pieces. I've learned from my mistakes, because there was a time with another build where I didn't really think it through on this phase, and then I actually ended up exposing domino, and then I needed to patch it out. So yeah, I guess we all learn by doing. The customer, my friend who ordered this cabinet, did want very beefy legs, and I didn't have material thick enough to make those from one piece, so what I'm doing here is gluing up two pieces, and the end dimensions I think ended up being something like 7.5 centimeters, which is I think something between 2 to 3 inches in these weird units that some people are using. Now I can finally get to the actual building. So as with always when building cabinets, there's a lot of panels you need to do. So what I have here, the 4 legs, obviously they are still oversized, I haven't cleaned them up. Then I have the panel for two doors that will be coming to the door, and I will be showing the SketchUp picture at the same time. I think it will be easier to follow. So that's the door. This will be the shelf. It's heavy. So the shelf that's going to the cabinet. This panel will be for the dividers. So the one going to the end and the one going to the middle. I will cut them from this piece. And then these two, I don't know yet which one will be which, but one will be the top panel and one will be the bottom one. So it has taken me a few days to build these, but as mentioned, now I can finally get to the actual building, so let's get to work. I'm the type of builder who uses way too much glue always, which means of course that I have to sand it and chisel it and get it out from all the places where it shouldn't be. After that was done, I started cutting the bottom panel to size, because on the next phase you see me using my jigsaw and a router to cut the slots where the legs will be. And as I mentioned, I'm still a beginner, but I understand a bit about wood movement, so I ended up leaving the slots or holes slightly bigger, so there is a small gap in the end product, obviously, for it to allow to move between the legs, because in a way I'm trapping the panel between the legs, and if I would just glue it directly to those legs, I think eventually this cabinet would crack. So my decision, of course talking with the customer as well, was to do it in this way, and I think it's fine. It doesn't really show up in the end product that much. The only way I figured how I can make 4 exactly accurate cuts, plus I will need to make 2 more for the shelf that will be going above this, was to build this very quick jig that I will use then with my router to make sure that every single slot is exactly the same. After chiseling the corner so that they're square, because the router leaves this round corner, then I just added this big chamfer to it, because I just like the look where it's going. So of course I could have done these faces after I have something to attach the panel into, because as of that moment I haven't glued the structure, the base of the cabinet yet, so obviously that's now the next thing I will do. And I am creating this video in the order of I actually built them, even though logically it might be wiser to do it vice versa, but this is just the way I built it. But talking about the build order, one of the main reasons why I've been wanting to learn how to do things in SketchUp is of course to visualize the piece, design what I want to build, but also to think beforehand, what can I glue before going to the next step. Because one thing I wanted to avoid with this cabinet was that there would be this massive glue up operation where I need to glue all the stretchers and the structures at the same time, because usually that kind of glue up, at least for me, doesn't end up in anything good. So for me it really helped when I had the picture and I was able to plan beforehand, like I will do this glue up now and that next, and so on and so on. I guess for some people things are very obvious. More experienced builders probably just know how to do things, at least in a simple cabinet like this. But for me, being able to create these different versions, moving the objects, just planning that yeah, I can do this here and I can do that there. And what I'm doing now in the video is that I am doing the first glue ups for the parts that will be the ends of the cabinet. The way I decided to add the divider that's at the center of the cabinet was to cut a dado on the bottom and top panels. And I think the plan was fine. I have actually built one cabinet before using the same joinery. But for some reason the execution was a bit poor, because I think it would make much more sense to put the panels next to each other, then add some kind of straight that I can then use the router with to make sure that the dado is exactly in the same place. For some reason I decided to measure the slot, the dado position. It all worked out fine in the end, but I don't know why I went with this way, because I've seen a million videos where it's done in a more smart way, but for some reason, just being in the workshop building this thing, I didn't think, so I made this part way too difficult for me. There would be a more simple way. So as I am now cutting the top panel into the correct size, you will see that obviously it doesn't have the dado yet. And this is the part where I should have had these two panels next to each other and cut the dado at the same time using a same straight. So it's one of these things. Sometimes I do things in a smart way. Way too often I do things in pretty stupid way. But as I mentioned, it all worked out in the end. But I guess this is also one of those things that the more I do, I will eventually find the kind of proper and smart ways of doing things, instead of sometimes doing it properly and sometimes measuring things when they shouldn't be measured. Now that I finally have the dados cut on my bottom and top panel in correct positions, it was time to make the divider in a way that it will actually fit the slot. I decided to use my router and then remove part of the tongue with my table, so after it. Fairly simple process. It all worked out fine in the end, but just watching this video afterwards, I'm like, why did I do things in an order I did? Before I can attach the bottom panel and start attaching the divider and other parts, I needed to mark for the dominoes, which is what you saw me doing, lying on the floor. That was just the only position I could figure out, so I did kind of a dry fit. I clamped the pieces together, marked the places where I need to add the dominoes, so that I can add the, I think stretchers is the word, what I'm doing, just to get the base structure done for the cabinet so that I can start working on the panels. And there you saw what happened when I started doing the actual glue up. So it was a bit tricky to get the long pipe clamps and everything aligned for the glue up, so it collapsed on me once, but it's not a big deal. I'm using Tightbond 3. I think it has like 10 minutes of open time, so I think I lost maybe 30 seconds or 1 minute. In this case I didn't end up in panic mode, but time to move on. So I decided to use Z-clips to attach the bottom panel to the base structure and actually all the other panels, so the shelf and the top panel will be using exactly the same Z-clip thing that I'm using here. This is another part where the build order might feel a bit strange, but as I mentioned in the beginning, I am not much of a designer, so I was kind of forced because of the way I designed to do it here. And here you see that the bottom panel has actually bowed. I have no idea why, but the way I decided to try to fix that was that when I glue the panels together, I'm adding these support blocks that you see here, and I was hoping that when I add the glue and when I add the clamps, I can actually push or pull the bow out by using the wooden blocks that you saw me adding to the top and bottom. And here you see that it actually worked out. So what I'm doing outside of the screen, I'm tightening the clamp, and you see that the bow is actually getting out. And this seems to hold fine. It's been, I think I glued this like 2 or 3 weeks ago while doing this voiceover. Now it's been staying fine, so I think I managed to fix this here. Now the way the customer, my friend, wanted to have this structure is that the shelves would be sitting on top of these square support thingies that I'm attaching here. And I decided to use stretchers. Obviously they have been cut to the same length, so I just had the stretchers on the bottom panel, then I put this structure on top of them, added clamps and glued it in. So for this one I didn't use any dominoes, and this was a thing I actually did not plan. I actually didn't know if I could fit the shelf to the structure, because it needed to be able to slide in a way that part will be going between the legs and that it would be flush with the divider. I tested it first with a kind of scrap piece, whatever I found, and it was to the millimeter. It fit pretty much perfectly, and I could say that I planned it in that way, but I actually didn't. I got lucky, so I don't even know what I would have done if it wouldn't have fit. But crisis averted. So what I'm doing now is that I'm cutting this groove to the back side of the cabinet where you would normally attach a plywood panel or whatever you use. But in this case, neither me or the customer didn't want to use plywood anywhere on this cabinet. So I did some googling. I was checking out how other people are building back panels to cabinets when they're not using plywood, keeping in mind that wood movement will be an issue. So I found this very simple way how I decided to do this, by adding these grooves and leaving a bit of a gap between the panels, so that if the wood decides to move as it does, it will not crack the panel. Of course, there are a million ways how to do this. This is the first time I ever use solid wood back panel instead of plywood. And where this cabinet will be going, the back will be sitting next to a wall, so no one will even see it. But I still like the outcome. This is probably a method I will use in future builds as well, because there's nothing wrong with plywood, but for me it makes me happier if I will be able to build the full cabinet using only solid wood. Maybe with drawers plywood is fine, but that's just personal thing. I was happy with the decision and I think it worked out quite well. Then I started working with the doors. They don't have any handles yet. The customer didn't want any hardware to be added, not any handles like that. We went back and forth how we will do this. I originally drew it in slightly different way in my SketchUp drawing, but then we ended up to a decision to just add this simple slot where fingers will easily go and then you can pull the door open. And I used very similar technique, building a very simple template that I then used my router with to cut them with precision so that they will be exactly the same. Getting back to the back panels, the cabinet is not yet complete, but I decided to take out the panels that I mentioned earlier and pre-finish them at this stage, because they were done, they were complete. So I sanded them, I water popped them, I sanded up to 180 grit, and I pre-finished them. And for this one the customer wanted me to use pure linseed oil, because at his house the kitchen countertops and all other furniture that they have built from oak as well are finished with linseed oil as well. I think it makes perfect sense, then things will be looking like similar with each other. And if he ever needs to reapply the oil, he can use the same stuff for everything. Then I started fitting the doors. Nothing special there for spacers. I was using playing cards, but anything works. And I just wanted to make sure that the doors will fit. They will not hit each other. They will open properly. Again, I did this pre-fitting before as well, but at this stage I wanted to do it again just to make sure everything will be okay. And as you see, the doors were part of the panels. I pre-finished at the same time I finished the back panels that I was talking about. But here you see the hinges were kind of strange. They didn't stop at 90. The door was able to close too much. So I needed to figure out a way, how do I stop the doors so that they will look nice when they're closed. Again, probably a million ways how to do this. I went the simple route by adding these very small blocks. So I added a bit of wood glue to it, and in the middle I added CA glue and then the activator, and that was a simple way how to get the doors aligned and stopping where I want them to stop. I don't have footage of all the sanding, but after water popping this just shows why it's necessary to do. You really see how the grain is raised. So after water popping I did the final sanding with 180, and as I mentioned earlier, I attached the top panel and the bottom panel in the same way with the Z-clips you see here as well. Then it was pretty much done, so time to add the finish all over to the cabinet, starting with the bottom. Then I lifted it up and added the finish to all the other layers. And as always, then I waited for, I think I waited like 30 minutes before I wiped off all the excess. And here's just some final footage of me finishing it, and then the project was done. So here you see how it looks like complete. Of course I still need to attach the panels back to the cabinet, but that was a very simple process because I only needed to add the screws back in. Everything was pre-finished, so this was a quick one. But basically now I'm done with the build, so I'm fairly happy how it turned out. There's some small mistakes here and there. I can always improve. But personally, this was a massive achievement for me because I was able to learn SketchUp, design it, build it in the way I wanted to build it, and I actually delivered it to the customer today while I'm doing this voiceover. He liked it, his wife liked it, I will get paid, and I think I am now much better woodworker than I was. Of course, always room for improvement, but I'm happy, and there you see how it looks like complete. So thanks for watching the video. Hopefully in 1 week I will have a new build coming out.